Welcome to the Health Conscious Living Podcast. I'm Dr. Gail Myers, integrative medicine physician. The purpose of this show is to teach you the same framework I've used to help heal myself and hundreds of others. We'll cover lifestyle health habits, meditation, and mindset topics to unlock your potential for optimal living and thriving. Welcome to the Health Conscious Living Podcast. I'm Dr. Gail Myers, and today's special guest is Jen Morris. Jen is the founder of Renegade Motherhood and the host of the Renegade Motherhood podcast. She's a certified integrative health coach and postpartum educator who helps moms recover the woman within the mother and reclaim their energy, vitality, and purpose. As someone who struggled with postpartum health effects for a long time after her own kids, this is deeply personal. Jen is on a mission to break down pervasive myths about postpartum recovery and help moms prioritize their health. So welcome, Jen.
Hi, thanks, Gail. I'm very honored to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. So tell us about your journey to becoming a Renegade Motherhood champion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have been in the nutrition and health field for 15 years. And so when about half that time was prior to having kids. So when when my husband and I decided to start our process to becoming parents, I really thought I knew a lot, and I might have known more than some do, I'm not really sure, but I was doing a lot of the things right, eating well and doing all the things while I was pregnant. And so when I gave birth and I found myself struggling for a long time with a lot of different things that were coming up, I really was a little surprised, I think, because I thought but I was doing everything right. I know how to eat. I've coached people on how to eat well. And what I've now really come to discover is that there is just so little conversation around mother's recovery in the postpartum phase. Even the way we talk about postpartum in our society, at least in the US where I'm based, is really does not serve moms or family units, because we clinically define it as this 6 weeks, sometimes up to 6 month period. And I think this gives a false idea that after this time, we're supposed to just have, bounced back. And we hear that phrase thrown out a lot. So when I was just feeling a lot of anger, a ton of overwhelm, a ton of brain fog, lots of other things, my patience was non-existent with my husband. And I finally got to a point where I started to kind of do some of my own research to figure out what was going on. Because I think while outwardly I appeared to have it all together and everything, inwardly I felt like something's not totally right. And so I kind of started going down a little bit of a rabbit hole of just Googling and trying to figure out what was going on, because it really wasn't anything that was talked about in a lot of the prenatal books that I read, a lot of the classes that I took. There was so much focus on the baby, which there should be, but so little conversation around what to expect as, a mom, and all the changes that happen to your body and how that affects your brain and how that affects your mental health. And it was very illuminating to me and made me really want to take care of myself, but then really start to raise my voice more around this, because we need a lot of change to happen, in the way that we have this conversation and help moms, and also I think prepare family units for what's to come.
And what did you discover? And how did you get the help that you need, or helped yourself in a way that helped you to bounce back is not the right word, to become your most vital, healthy self?
Yeah. Well, a few things that I learned were how one being that your gut changes, your gut microbiome. I don't want to get too clinical or scientific here, but your microbiome is what is all the different microbiota and everything that live in your gut microbiome. And that actually evolves and changes during your pregnancy. And it becomes less diverse. And typically, studies have shown that humans that have less diverse microbiomes are more susceptible to certain mental illnesses, obesity, and other things. And so it changes and becomes less diverse during our pregnancy. So that was one thing that I was like, well, that's interesting, right? Another piece that I learned was about how the brain can also change, and some of your gray matter can actually shrink about 5%. It makes us more vigilant to be able to, wake up when the baby's crying and anticipate, your baby's needs and things like that. But it also then can lessen other pieces. So I think, it can play a role in, your thinking. It can play a role in like overwhelm and focus, emotions, things like that. And the interesting thing is that your gut and brain talk to each other through what we call the gut-brain connection, the gut-brain axis. So while I have not done clinical research on this, Gail, I'll be completely honest, to me, there has to be something there of the fact that your gut's changing, your brain is changing, and they're talking to each other, right? The other thing that I found, that I discovered, was there's something called postpartum depletion that I find fascinating. We could have a whole other conversation on that, but postpartum depletion was something that was never, uttered to me until I found it on my own. And it's basically when like you have given so much to making this, baby, in utero, and then through breastfeeding and stuff, that you're just depleted emotionally, physically, mentally, you're drained nutritionally. And in the US, we really don't have a lot of the kind of ancient customs that a lot of other cultures and countries have of, moms staying in bed for a month, after giving birth, and eating the foods that really help your gut heal. And we are expected to be out of the hospital, back home, and oftentimes back to work in a matter of weeks, which is a huge systemic failure. I mean, it's just a huge failure. And so we're eating what we need to survive. We're often entering pregnancy already stressed out and depleted. And so it's sort of this visual that like we're kind of in a hole, and then we're just digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper while we're creating life. And then we're expected to just find a way out of the hole while holding a baby and feeding a child and working. And so, so those are some of the pieces that I discovered and started to kind of, put together, do some reading and things like that, and started to kind of assemble a team of people that I, was fortunately able to, have the privilege to be able to do some of that and go on that journey. But I had to start with giving myself permission to do it, and realizing that like I was worthy of spending some time and some money and some other resources to get, some both mental health support through therapy and then other modalities, that some of it was like acupuncture, some of it was working with a functional, nutrition coach. That was actually more recently after my second daughter. And then some of it was just kind of doing some of the work on my own to kind of trial and error and see what was helping me and what wasn't. So it was really writing myself a permission slip that I was worth it.
Absolutely. And you gave yourself permission slip as a mother and as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And because, the demands on motherhood, I mean, there's been the demand on your body, and then there's the demand on you physically, and then the demand of being a mother and bonding and taking care of. So what happens to mom in the process? So
Right.
to give yourself that permission slip,
Yeah.
if you were to write that permission slip now, what would you tell yourself the first time around?
Oh gosh. First time around, I think I would say, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And it is, that I think that you deserve help.
Yes.
Because I think we often will say things like, "Oh, we need help," or "I need help," but it's really about deserving it and knowing that we, as moms, are deserving of support and of help and of being heard, and not that we just need it, that we also, really we are worthy of it.
And it's essential. I mean, just because it hasn't been really valued and up until this point, or just people are not aware of it in healthcare, as you describe. When you take ownership of that and have that honoring of yourself, because you do deserve it, everyone deserves to be healthy, and taking that validation for yourself and your life and your child, in all your roles, can only make everything better. But most of all, it's going to make you better, right?
Absolutely.
Make you feel better and your best. And then you're going to be able to be more of who you are in all your loving care to yourself and to your child and your husband and your life.
Yeah.
What a breakthrough. That's amazing. And then you had your second child during COVID.
Yes.
Now that's another journey. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So we found out we moved from one house about, 15 miles away to a new neighborhood, a new home in December 2019. So we were still we were still very much in boxes, and then found out just a couple of days before Christmas that we were expecting our second. And then, of course, as we all know, February came along, and March, and everything shut down. So it was. I'm very grateful that it was not my first pregnancy. I really have so much empathy for families who were expecting their first during that time, because I really can't imagine how difficult that must have been. But it was challenging. My daughter was then home with us. My older daughter was home with us. We took her out of the daycare she was in. My husband was then working from home. I was working from home. We were still kind of living out of boxes. We hadn't totally even moved in yet. We were still kind of in that process of settling. We hadn't really met anybody because we were in a new neighborhood, and we really couldn't meet anybody. And my family, they lived in Phoenix, so my parents were able to drive up once or twice, and a few, like in a straight shot, like literally peeing on the side of the road. They're amazing. So we were very fortunate that they were a day drive from us. But it definitely set me back. I found that my second pregnancy was just harder on my body. I was older. I was 38, 39. And so, and then having another child to be caring for, and just all the, stress of living in a pandemic, and a lot of the unknown, I think was was hard for everybody. But, kind of being like, oh my goodness, I'm bringing a baby into this, this like next level kind of world, was just an extra thing that kept me up at night for sure. And then, we knew going into it that we wanted 2 kids, and we would be done with 2 kids. And well, I knew that that's what I wanted. And I still am very clear that that's what I wanted. I'm very grateful that we have 2 amazing children. There was still a grieving process. I think once I remember being very sad, like leaving the hospital even, because I was like, this will be the last time I'm here for, like to give birth. And, knowing that like our oldest daughter couldn't come to the hospital, to meet her baby sister, during that time, and that we wouldn't ever have that, opportunity again. And so there was like a big grief process, that, was absolutely exacerbated through the hormone swings, and again, like the isolation and things like that. But I remember just like breaking down and just crying like uncontrollably, to the point, several times, to the point that my husband was like, are you okay? Do we need to go somewhere? And I knew where it was coming from, but it was definitely heightened the second time around, because I think, just circumstantial, probably also hormones, being older. There were a whole bunch of things at play. But I also felt better prepared this time because I had kind of known, I'd been through it once. So I knew what to look out for myself. I knew a lot better what to ask for from as far as support. Like my parents only came the first time for like 3 days. This time they came for a month because I knew that we needed that, especially given the pandemic. So I felt better. I felt better equipped for sure. But also every time it's a very different experience. You could have postpartum depression one time and you could not have it a second time, or vice versa. So there's always going to be some unknown. And I think, again, that's something that is not talked enough about either.
So in addition to your parents coming for a month, which must have been really a blessing and so supportive, what else did you do for self-care that time around with the knowledge that you had from your first pregnancy and delivery?
Yeah, we actually, when my littlest was 3 months, we right before the holidays, we packed up the car and we drove to Phoenix and moved in with my parents for about 3 months. Because it was 2020, 2021, and I knew I am somebody that is very social. Part of how I support my mental health is by being around other people. And I knew that as we were looking at, winter coming and having a 3-year-old, she was 3.5. So yeah, 3.5-year-old home. My husband was working from home. I was, wanting to get back to some work, because my littlest was 3 months. Work is also something that supports my mental health. So I knew I needed to be doing some of that. And it was like, I don't know how this is going to happen if we don't have some support. So I feel very fortunate. I feel very privileged that we were able to do that. I know many people who do not have that available, and that kind of flexibility. So I do not take that for granted. But, my husband wasn't like totally on board with it at the time. And I know it was a lot on him because he and I are very different personalities. He really likes to have his space. He does not want to necessarily be like infringing on people and on top of people. And it was, a lot of us in one house for a long time. But, I had to be clear that like, this is what I need. Like as a new second mom, a new mom again, nursing, nonstop, trying to get back to some semblance of like a routine and schedule and work. So that was another big piece that I did. And then I got back to therapy after we got back and after some of the restrictions lifted. Therapy for myself, therapy with my husband and I as well. That was a big piece. And so that those were the two pieces, like kind of in the immediate aftermath, like the first year of my second daughter's life were some of the big pieces.
And when we spoke earlier, you mentioned meditation, that you learned about meditation during that process.
Yeah, that's been a little more of the last year, where I had a moment. So I had a couple moments, but a month at the end of 2022, where I got super sick. So this was a little over a year ago, and I just got hit with, it seems like everyone's getting hit with something, but I ended up having a bacterial infection, and it took a while to figure out what it was. It took a lot of ruling things out and waiting for cultures to come back, and finally figured out what it was, but my body just kind of crashed. And looking back, I'm not really surprised it did, because I think while I was doing some things to support myself, it was a lot of it was a lot of like treating symptoms instead of treating the whole person. So I was like, well, if my energy's low, then maybe I need a little more B vitamins, and B vitamins are great, right? Like many people are deficient in B vitamins, and they can do a lot of things for your energy very quickly if you are deficient. Just like iron, if you're iron deficient, you start eating more iron containing foods and things like that. It's like amazing how you can feel, but it's not always treating the whole piece of it. And so I think looking back, that's really kind of what happened. There were a lot of things I was doing well. I was working out again regularly. We had a lot more help. We had more routines and stuff like that. But I was still not totally ready to like deal with other things in my life that I felt out of alignment with. I was showing up in my work in a way that I thought people wanted me to be, not really in a way that I wanted me to be. And when you're out of alignment and there's friction in pieces of your life, it takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your mind. It's all connected, right? I mean, you know that better than anybody, Gail.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I was in bed for, the third or fourth week in, toward the end of 2022, I was kind of just scrolling on Facebook, like just not feeling well enough to do anything, but just kind of, as we do. And I saw a friend of mine who I'd gotten to know was posting about a program that's all about like more connecting with your feminine energy and getting out of the hustle culture and energy work and all these things that like, I would always hear about and be like, yeah, that sounds good. But there was part of me, maybe it's because I lived in New York City for almost 10 years, but there was part of me that was just like, this is not, I don't know, this is like too woo. This is like, you got to work hard if you want to get stuff and all these things. But there was a moment that I just said, Jen, this is what you need. This is what you need. And so I reached out to her and we had a call and I was like, this is what I need to lean into in 2023. And so through that program, it was a lot more visualizations, meditation, and just like being able to be quiet, whether that was in a meditative state or just in like my day-to-day, like pausing and breath work and being able to really be quiet so that I could really tune out all the noise and all the shoulds. I call it like my little mom voice of like mothering me, like you should be doing this and you should be getting up earlier and you should da-da-da-da-da-da. And like really quieting that voice down so that I could really listen to like who I am at my core and what I want to do and what support I need and what purpose, like really rediscovering my purpose. And I think as moms, we don't give ourselves that time because we constantly have 85 conversations going in our heads about the kids and the schedules and what the kids need and what the kids, activities are and where the kids need to be picked up. And there's so little time to think about like, what do we need? And what do we want to like do this year? And that has nothing to do with our kids. And I think there's like a fear of talking about that too, because it makes us sound like, oh, our kids aren't the most important thing, but I'm important too. And if I'm not aligned and fulfilled and happy, my kids know that. They can pick up on that like that. So it's a critical place to get to.
Absolutely. Reconnecting on that deeper level so that you can be your true self, your authentic self, and you're happier, you're healthier.
Yeah.
And, as we talked about, my core message is that when you heal from your spirit that is whole and undivided, you heal your body and your life. And so that reconnection, in addition with everything that you've brought to yourself and your life, now you can share with your renegade women and mothers. So tell us about that and how you help people now.
Yeah. So a couple of things that are happening and then also in the works. So I did start a podcast called Renegade Motherhood, and it's really short, sweet tidbits that I kind of wish I had known about. It'll evolve, I think, to have more interviews and things like that. But I knew that I just wanted to get the information out, and it didn't need to be pretty, because I think that's another thing that we need to embrace, that motherhood is messy and it doesn't need to look like, Kim Kardashian's motherhood experience. And that's just not realistic. So that's out there. And then I'm creating a community, a paid community, which will really be where we build community, because we are not meant to do this alone. There are way too many of us trying to do this alone. It'll be where I really teach people how to recover from postpartum. And that could be whether you had kids 6 months ago, 6 years ago, or 10 years ago. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, the way we talk about postpartum can be really harmful. And I think there are so many moms out there who are struggling with stuff. And because it's been 5, 8 years since they had kids, they don't think about the fact that it could be connected to that. but that definitely was true for me. So that will be coming in the coming month, but you can get on a wait list to know more about that. And my goal with that is to really make it very accessible and affordable for everybody too, because I really think that the more we can all get together and talk about these things and heal in community, and that then we can go out and we can pay it forward. When we feel better, I truly believe that moms are the change makers, and that we truly want to create a better world for our kids. I know it sounds cliche, but I really do believe that. But we cannot do that if we are completely depleted and burned out and, unwell mentally and physically. We can't do it.
Worn out.
We have to take care of ourselves first so that we can go out and really take care of not only our families, but also like our communities, our societies, and things like that. So to have some conversation around that and talk about career and talk about, financial wellness too. I mean, it's becoming now that more and more households are supported primarily by a working mother. And so how can we sustain that then as well, and do that in a way that is more aligned and healthy, as opposed to this like kind of toxic burnout culture that is the norm and should not be the norm.
No. So it sounds like you're writing a big permission slip.
Yes.
To all the mothers out there who are the change makers, raising the change makers of tomorrow.
Yes.
And giving them that permission slip to be all of who you are. But the most important thing is to be yourself, to love yourself, to take care of yourself first in a way that is going to really make you healthy and on your terms, as you define it, not how the world defines it.
Yeah.
And all the shoulds and, demands and all those other external criteria that women and mothers carry with them generationally even.
Yeah, I think you just wrote my sales copy, Gail, so thank you.
Oh, so you'll have the recording.
Perfect, thank you. You said it better than I could.
Happy to do it. No, I think you're amazing, and this is very, as we spoke earlier, it is such important work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So how can people reach out to you and follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. I hang out on Instagram, and that's at Meet Jen Morris. I'm also on TikTok sometimes, and that is the Jen Morris. I keep trying to change it to match, and it's not letting me. So, and then you can also find me on my website, which is renegademotherhoodlife.com, and you can send messages through there and everything as well. And then, yeah, like I said, the wait list is open for my society. And if you go to the website, you can grab some other freebies there as well. Some free guides and some more good stuff about gut health and brain health. And a lot of that lives there too.
That's fabulous. Well, I can't wait to hear more from you in the future.
Thank you.
And I am really grateful that you're with us today to share you and to share all your knowledge and the hope that these women can now all have for themselves.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for paving the way. So I really admire you so much, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to chat today.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen.